you're out there, you're riding, you're having a good time, and taking in the outdoors.
The fight isn't over. The fight is just beginning.
What's going on, guys? This is Carl with the RacerRed channel. Here I come out of the pits for loop number 3. Each loop was different. The first loop was probably the most technical, and loop 2 and 3 were a little bit faster. At this point of the race, I had already crashed and my clutch was slipping real bad, so at this point it was all about preserving the bike and trying to keep the RPMs pretty low to the point where I wasn't burning up the clutch too much. I wasn't using the clutch hardly at all. I just put it in gear and just gradually put on the gas, and I was trying to utilize the bottom end of the power as much as possible. Any pulls up the hills or anything like that were just not good. It would just start letting loose right away, and I could just feel that clutch burning up. At this point, I'm missing my left radiator shroud, and in loop 2 I smashed into that rock pretty good. So the front forks, this is my second ride on these new front forks, and they were really not feeling good. There were certain situations where they felt good, like high-speed washes and stuff like that. They were doing okay until I started hitting anything major, and then they really felt like they were just blowing through. And I was checking the bottoming ring on these forks, and I was just bottoming right away. So I just needed to do some adjustment on them. I still have a lot of confidence in these forks that they are going to be a lot better than the air forks. I just need to play with the clickers and get them adjusted. And all these ravines and everything, I'm really staying off of the clutch as much as I possibly can and just rolling on the gas. And actually that's part of what really caused my wreck, is that I wasn't using the clutch. So when I was hitting those rocks, I wasn't pulling in the clutch. I just let the clutch stay out, and I was getting the wrong power at the wrong time. It was really hard to pass in these conditions. The dust was just terrible. It was still a really good race. I mean, it was a lot of fun. The results were pretty bad, but it was still a good time. Before this race, I changed my spark plug. I thought that was going to alleviate my problems with the not starting, but I just ordered a battery for it after this race, so hopefully that helps things out. We checked the valves and all that, so the bike is running good. It definitely had a bad spark plug though prior to this race, so hopefully we can get things squared away. I fired it up right before the start, and it started no problem, and then during the start it just had the worst failure to start it's ever had. It almost got going, and then I gave it some gas and it died again, and after that it just took a long time to get this bike started. So it was not my benefit at all for this race, because it was just a gigantic cloud of dust, and to push into the dust too much is really taking your risk, and it's no longer calculated at all. It's just blind luck. It's just pushing straight into a blind cloud, and at that point, if somebody is stopped or if there's a rock, there's no skill that can save you at that point. It's just pushing your bike straight into a blind cloud. So it's really tough. The dust is a huge obstacle out here. So despite a few things wrong with my bike, still was a lot of fun to ride. I mean, the clutch wasn't working. Any acceleration and it would just spin. I couldn't get any horsepower to the rear wheel. I was probably running at, I would say, half horsepower, so I couldn't do any climbs or anything like that at full speed. And that started right at the end of the first lap. Is the first time I felt it. The first loop is really when I started feeling it rev out, going uphill and stuff like that. Not giving me full horsepower at all. pretty dusty conditions. It would have been nice to have a rainstorm come through right before this one. Loop 2 was definitely good. Well, Loop 2 and 3 were definitely high speed, but Loop 1 was an interesting choice for me because it was a lot of single track and then a lot of really silty, powdery stuff. Really hard to pass in those conditions. So if they had the course a little bit different, it would have been to my benefit for sure. The more people I could pass early on definitely would have been better. It is what it is. That's just part of racing. I mean, you're going to crash and your bike is going to fail. You're going to get bad starts and you're just going to have bad days. And one of these, I mean, I'm just lucky I didn't get hurt. So that's what I'm fortunate for after this race, is that although I went down twice during this race, neither of those ended in injury, so I'm happy about that. The bike got pretty torn up, but even it could have been way worse. It ended up taking out the shroud, but the radiator's not leaking or anything like that, so the bike held up pretty well, and it got me through the rest of the race. I mean, I went down once in lap 1, once in lap 2, and it still did the entire 95 miles or whatever this race is, no problem. So not really without a problem. I mean, it did have the slipping clutch issue, but it still got me there. I was starting to wonder though, on this lap you'll see me come into the finish line and attempt to do the final hill, and it's pretty steep. I was trying to give it some gas and it just started spinning up and burning up the clutch. I barely made it up that final hill. I had to drop down, or I had to drop RPM by going up a gear and then lugging it down and just really lugging the bike, trying to get as much power to the rear wheel as possible without making the clutch slip. Anytime I get near somebody, you can see the plumes of dust come up, and that slows me down a huge percentage. And it's not like I'm the only one out here. Everybody's dealing with this, but not everybody got a dead last start. It's nice to at least be middle of the pack at the starting line. It just lingered. This dust seemed to linger for a long time. Even if they were hundreds of feet ahead of me, you could still see these plumes of dust come up, and you do have to slow down for those. Otherwise, I mean, as a rider, you need every single detail of the terrain. So if there's a bump there, if there's a rock or a rut, you need to land everything just right, and if you don't, you're pretty much screwed. So you don't want to go down at these speeds. This bike is geared up now, so it'll do about 90, and I've hit top speed several times throughout this race, so I don't want to go down at 90 miles per hour. If I can keep from doing that, I'll be good enough. I would say this race was good enough. Definitely not the best, but not the worst either. And when it's all said and done, we're all out here to just have a good time anyways, so it was definitely that. I had a good time when I wasn't in the dust. I gotta say though, like when I was in the dust, even right here where I can see these plumes, that is enough to really mess with my day right there. Just trying to ride through any sort of blinding dust is pretty tough. When this wash right here, this is where I start to notice some major issues. Well, I already noticed a lot of major issues with the front end of the bike, but in this wash right here where it's high speed and choppy, the front end was not behaving at all, and I think I will alleviate that just by stiffening things up a little bit. I think I was just blowing through the stroke, and so I'm going to raise the front end of the bike a little bit, give me more stability, and then stiffen up the spring rate, that way it doesn't just blow through so quickly. I think that's what I was having trouble with in the corners too. And part of that is just, it's not even the fork's fault, it's that I'm used to the air fork, which when I gave the bike input it was instant because there's no mush at the top end of the stroke. And now there's a lot of mush. So when I lean into a corner instead of direct input, the fork is absorbing a lot of my input. So that was definitely something I had to get used to during this race, being the second ride on these forks. But I'll definitely have more dialed. I'm still pretty confident that these forks are going to be really good. It's just I have to get dialed. All parts are already ordered for this bike. I'm going to be up there, well, the next desert race, I'm going to be doing the Sand City 100, so that should be pretty fun. Slowly but surely I'm getting the bike dialed. Keeping fresh oil changes and a lot of maintenance, so it's definitely good to go. I think they did a really good job with this course though. There were a couple times when I blew through like different corners. The markings are hard to read sometimes, especially on some of the high-speed sections. But I think they marked a lot of the hazards really well with blue. That's what you're looking for in these races, is the blue tape. That means a hazard's coming up and you should slow down. And the pink markings just mean that you're on course, and then you're always looking for pink arrows, which means a turn is coming up. Sometimes it gets hard to navigate for sure, especially when you're going as fast as you can. That's something that a lot of people don't really think about when they're watching a race, I think. As a rider, not only are you navigating the course as fast as you can go, but you're also looking for markings. And if you don't see a marking for a while, you start to wonder if you're on the right course. I think actually right in here somewhere, I start to wonder if I'm on the course. And I start to slow down and kind of look around. As long as I can see these pink ribbons, I'm fine. And it's not exactly right here, but somewhere along here, I go a while without seeing any ribbons, so I start to wonder. Going into this race, I thought it was going to be the same loop 3 laps, but each loop was a little bit different. That really disperses the impact too on the land, so you don't get any, well, you don't get as much damage to the track. It makes it way better. So having different spots you're going to definitely limits that impact. I know in other events I've hit, there's a big difference on the track from lap 1 and 2, and especially if it's a 3-lap event, which I have yet to do besides this one. I think on this race, lap 1 was 35 miles, 2 was 35, and then 3 was 25. I did see a few cows out in the way out in the desert. Kind of wondered how they would react. Luckily nothing ran out in front of me, but some of them were pretty close to the track. I did have some runners, but they were luckily running away from the track. A lot of these pebbles, I think another thing that a lot of people don't really consider when they're watching a race like this, non-riders I should say, is that as a rider you have to worry about every single little obstacle in the track. So every single little bump or divot or rock. If you hit a baseball-sized rock with your front tire, it could be the end of your race. I mean, it could send you cartwheeling down the track. So as a rider, you're watching every single little detail and moving the bike back and forth exactly where you want it. Same goes for ruts. If you hit a rut wrong, it's still, I mean, these bikes take balance. So the faster you go, the more they want to stay upright, but if you get sideways, it will bite. So here I'm revving it out. That's probably close to 90 miles an hour right there. would not want a deer or anything to run out in front of me right now. Like I said, I was pretty happy with the bike as far as holding up. I mean, right here, pretty much throughout the whole race, I was revving it up pretty good, utilizing the top end, and it just runs and runs. The clutch issue was definitely not the greatest, but that's to be expected at some point. I think the clutch issue may have been the adjustment in the actual clutch lever, because I'm using a different clutch lever to reduce my clutch weight, or my pull weight. So I think that one kind of came out of adjustment a little bit. We'll see if my adjustments actually help, but that was definitely in the wrong spot. So you can see at these high speeds, you start to get into some dust plumes, and that really affects your confidence going into these obstacles. You get the rider ahead of you, whether they hit the brake right there or they accelerated. Could have been any number of things that caused a big cloud of dust right there, but that really affects how fast you can go through these sections. That makes it really hard to pass. Had this track been watered down the night before or something with a rainstorm, this race would have been so much easier. And I really feel like I should be in the top 10 at least every race, but this race especially, I should have been way higher up. Just getting through riders, that's the biggest challenge. When I was on the course right here, I actually started to think that my clutch was cooling off and maybe it was doing a little bit better. This guy right here is pretty shocked at how my bike looks. I told him, yeah, you should have seen what the rock looked like. I beat that rock up into another wash, and through the desert we go. In these washes, and just in a desert race in general, you're always looking for the best line, and you always want to take the line of least resistance. And when I'm flowing through a course like this, I go where the course naturally takes me, and I'm always looking for a way, just the path of least resistance, not necessarily the funnest path, which is one of the problems I have just in racing in general, is sometimes I'll take the funnest path, and I've kind of reset my mind in that way. I'm trying to get to the point where when I'm in a race, I'm not about the funnest line, I'm about the line that is the easiest and the fastest. And so when I'm going through here, I'm looking for the path of least resistance, as you always should be doing. And in these courses, there are tracks that go all over the place, and a lot of times they don't exactly follow the course. And just my natural path through this led me up onto the side of this little wash. I ended up passing a rider, and he called it a cheater line when I was done, which I thought was pretty funny, but really it's just taking a smarter line. It's all about line choice. That's a big part of racing and riding. It seemed like in this race, a lot of the riders did not want to be passed. When it's really dusty and the riders are kind of really resistant to being passed, it makes things really tough. And that's probably the main issue I ran into with this race, is that just The dust was bad, and then when I got up to a rider, like if I hear a rider behind me, obviously he's faster than I am, so usually I'll let him pass. That's just good etiquette in my mind. You don't have to do that, but you should do that, in my opinion. Because if they, especially this late in the race, if they caught all the way up to you, and keep in mind I'm coming from dead last here, if I come up to a rider, I feel like they should give me some room to get by, but no, a lot of riders did not do that. Didn't do that at all. Some points I was kind of doing some block passes or high speed, kind of off course passes. Cheater lines, as that one guy called it, when you have to go through the sagebrush to get around people. But those aren't necessarily better lines, it's just when there's this much dust, you have to find alternatives to get around people. This is a line that is already carved in. This is part of the race course. You can see the dust plume in front of me. I'm catching the rider in front of me. And that's actually the one who said I was cheating right here. And I'll let you guys kind of look at how I chose these lines, but literally all of them were just natural flow state for the course. And there were pretty big consequences to the line I chose as well. You really had to watch yourself. See, this is just natural flow of the course right here. And it's up out of the wash. See right there, that gigantic, there was a big old ravine I had to jump over. And there was a couple of those, which makes this line not necessarily better than the one in the ravine, but it's the one I chose to get out of the dust, and because it was the path of least resistance. But see, if I was behind that rider to my right now, I would not be able to go this fast, not because of the terrain, but because of all this dust. So, because I was off to his left, I was able to just go right by him. One of these days I'll start up front, that way I can contend with riders who are, that I should be contending with. That way I don't have to spend the entire race trying to fight through the entire group. But that's my own bad. Oh look, there's a cow. I had to avoid that cow. I forgot about that. Yeah, and I feel like there's more of a level of danger, too, when you're dealing with riders that are not in your class. No matter what class that is, whether you're in the C class, B class, or A or AA. If you're dealing with riders outside of that skill set, or skill level, then it really does make things dangerous because your speed, like the rider I just passed, the speed isn't even close. The skill level difference is huge. But if the other person's going super slow, that can kind of cause a lot of hazard for you. And so it's way better and way safer if you can match your riding level with the people around you during the race, then it makes things much safer. So even if you're going extremely fast, side by side with another pro, if you're a pro, then that is way safer than passing sea-level riders if you're a pro. That's not putting anybody down at all. That's just saying it's better and safer to be in your group. So if you get a horrible start, then it's completely my fault. I'm not trying to make any excuses or anything, but if you get a bad start, you put yourself in that situation where you really have to contend with riders that are just a way different level. Kind of a pretty view going up towards the mountains. The mountains are still snow-capped. They won't be very long at this rate. I think today's race was about 75 degrees. The road out to the races was like a 4x4 road, and I drove the ambulance, so I have a converted ambulance that I camp in. That I took to the races. Man, it was sketchy going up that road. Now I know its capability, though. It did pretty good. But yeah, those mountains won't be snow-capped for long at this rate. The day after this race, it dropped down, though. It was like low 50s. So pretty considerable change in weather. But it has been pretty sunny still. I think it's supposed to increase later on. So I think we're going into spring officially, and should open up the high mountain single track here pretty soon. I'll be racing pretty much all year. I've got a bunch of races I want to do. I keep going back and forth on the Massacre Extreme Enduro located in Orofino. Here I backtrack. You can see the rider behind me. That right there is the only time I had to backtrack, where I actually passed up the corner. I was glad that I got back on course and I didn't have to pass that guy again. So yeah, I think I've been going back and forth on if I'm going to do the Orofino Extreme Enduro. I guess it's coming up. Keep going back and forth. I'm not sure, because I'm definitely going to do the Sand City 100, which is the week before. My goal is to hit that race. I don't know if I will yet, but I guess only time will tell. Going through this wash here, I was getting pretty tired. The old legs were getting tired. But I felt pretty good throughout this whole race, physically. I was going so slow throughout pretty much most of this race that I don't think I exerted myself very much. I got 10th in the open expert class on this race, and I got 44th overall. So the number of riders that were in this race, I think there was about 180, something like that. Quite a few riders that did 3 laps. Riders who were in this race that did not do 3 laps, I think there were something like 400, somewhere around 400. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed watching the rest of the race. Be sure to click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.
out of the draw and went by me.
Yeah, dude, there's lines going everywhere.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.